Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this video goes into I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in you. Not you, the person listening, but maybe you. Let's find out together. Look, one of the most irritating parts about arguing about comics these days is how people take two very different points that are not related, and they decide to plug them together because it thinks it makes their point stronger, when in reality it just makes them look like an idiot. And this is true across the board. We see it with sales. We see it in a number of things. I keep referencing that people should look up the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's this idea that you get a little bit of information, you think you're an expert, you get a lot of false confidence, and you go running around making a fool out of yourself. And you should avoid that because you don't want to make a fool out of yourself, I think. But one of the most common ones that comes up for comics is manga. Now, if you're new to this channel, or you've only heard a couple videos, whatever, you don't really know me, I am a huge fan of manga. I have been for decades, and that's not an exaggeration, I mean decades. One of the comic artists, writers, mangaka creators, that's not quite right, but one of the creators that I absolutely adore is Rumiko Takahashi. I think in the the Hall of Fame of incredible comic creators, she would be up there. I think, I put her in that same realm of Jack Kirby and people like that who had a profound, massive influence in comics. If you think worldwide comics, Rumiko Takahashi is a freaking legend. And if you don't know who that person is, like the gentleman who sent me the mail earlier, then you can't really say you're an expert on manga. I understand gatekeeping and all these rules people put in place. I'm just saying if you calling yourself a manga expert, somebody who really understands the business, but you have no idea who Rumiko Takahashi is, then something went very, very wrong in your education. It's like saying you're a very perfect mathematician, but you don't actually know how to multiply. It would be weird. One of the common statements that gets brought up more recently is that look how manga is kicking the ass of US comics. And if you're just comparing the top selling books, you're not entirely wrong. Looking at bestseller lists, looking at the book sales, things like My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer in particular are dominating. They're doing incredibly well. They're selling tons and tons of copies. They seem to show no signs of slowing down. Now, of course, they will. All titles do. But those titles are doing incredibly well. And there's other really high manga selling books that are doing great in the US. They are doing far better than traditional comics like Spider-Man, Batman, the X-Men, Superman. Those titles are not doing as well as some of this manga work. And like I've said in other videos, I think there's a major threat to pay attention to where manga is concerned. And that threat is really along the lines of, look, kids, meaning probably not you, probably not the person listening to this, kids coming into this space, starting to read comics for the first time, are increasingly picking up manga rather than North American US comics. They tend to go from Dogman to manga. And nowhere is this more true than, my daughter is back in school, part-time anyway, in-person class, and the teacher is asking, hey, what is it that you're reading? And the answer, almost to a student, was Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia. Very few people mentioned Spider-Man, any of the US comics. A couple mentioned books by Raina Telgemeier, things like Smile and Guts. It's usually a tiny bit older audience than 5th grade, but around that area. That should be very worrying to US comic creators. It's because this next generation coming up is being fed manga. They're consuming it. They're finding it easier to pick up My Hero Academia than Spider-Man, than Miss Marvel, than several of these other titles that are coming out there. And that should have comic companies worried. However, we also have to get a few things right about manga. Keep in mind that the manga you see here in the US, in the bookstores, in Barnes & Noble or other places, you're seeing the stuff that is curated to some extent. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's been translated, nearly all of it, and you're not seeing all of the manga being produced. You're seeing the manga that is believed will sell well over here. And one other area that manga, it does seem to be doing a better job, is that they're picking better what to bring to the US. However, if you go over to Japan, you'll quickly learn two facts about manga that kind of disrupt the narrative people like to say. The first is that somewhere between 90 to 95% of manga doesn't make it. They try it, it comes out, it fails to get an audience, and it dies relatively quickly. Now you might argue, hey, this is a sign that the comic publishers, the manga publishers, know what they're doing a little bit better because they're canceling these books faster. Sort of. That's sort of the case, but oftentimes there's different reasons. I will say, I do think that there's a better look at the business in Japan. I do think Japan doesn't mess around with things like, hey, let's just try this a little longer and hope it builds an audience in another way. And as a result, they've probably missed out on some sales. There's probably a handful of titles that, if given a little bit more time, would have done better. We'll never know. But it is true that they tend to cut bait on titles quicker. The other thing, though, that's true about manga is that many people producing manga are dirt poor. The pay is not great. The whole mangaka community and the assistants and everything else, that typically is not wonderful. Now, one of the things that people like to do in the US when they're having these arguments is they hold up things like My Hero Academia or One Piece, and they're like, look at how much more powerful and strong selling this is against North American comics. And they are right. 100% right. The problem is that would be a little bit, if you just use North American comics, of somebody holding up Batman and saying, look, Batman is kicking the ass of, I don't know, Get It Together by Sina Grace, an Image title. Well, I mean, of course it is. Of course. You're taking the best in class, the title that has the most mainstream appeal and built-in sales, and you're comparing it to something fairly small. Every now and then I see people do a comparison of like, hey, look at dumb woke Marvel publishing Riri Williams in this new issue of Champions, and look at how crappy it is in sales compared to My Hero Academia. And I mean, again, that's a little bit like comparing a pro football player who's at the top of their career against somebody in middle school who's playing flag football and still trying to figure out how to run with all this new hair on their chest. It's a weird comparison. Now, there are, again, plenty of ways that you can compare manga against North American comics in terms of the business model, in terms of the packaging, in terms of the selection of what's getting promoted, and I think they're doing a great job. I'm not saying this from no, let's defend the North American comic companies. They're making a million stupid mistakes. Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. However, we have to be fair. Fair is fair, and we've got to compare like things. So I get this mail from this guy who's like, I don't know who this Rumiko Takahashi is, but the fact is all caps, is that manga is completely destroying all US comics, and there's no question about that. Lots of exclamation marks. And then they send me to this video where it's some bluntly goofball mouth breather talking in a very hysterical voice around why Bakugo is a better character than Magneto. And I don't even know where to begin with all the weirdness of this entire thing. I mean, are we comparing My Hero Academia's Bakugo against Magneto? That's a weird matchup, but okay, I guess we can do that. Strong selling manga has found a way to do incredibly well in the US. That's absolutely true. And right now, if you're a US Western comic book publisher, you should shut the F up and start paying attention to why they are able to get their job done. But if your conclusion there is that all Western comics are dead and everything manga does is superior, you are drawing the wrong conclusion. Again, lots of manga fails. The business model for the creators of manga still isn't great. Most people are not making a lot of money. And then a couple of people are making crazy money. But anyway, you don't judge everyone by the top success. And it is very worth remembering that here in the US, you are getting kind of hand-picked titles designed to sell well, that we know are going to sell well. And that's what you're seeing on the shelf. You're not just seeing the mass of all the manga coming out. Again, you go to Japan, go to Shibuya, go to Shinjuku, go to some of the bookstores there, see all the manga. It's very impressive. And then note what's selling. It's a tiny amount of the total volume of books printed are selling. Now, the ones that are selling amazing, and you can't take away from that. Like I said, manga is a definite threat to the US. But we're all going to waste our time, comparing dick sizes if we're if we're just doing this kind of math. It is ridiculous. Again, I'm a fan of manga. I have been, always have been. I think that there are several creators. Oda, is just a genius for everything that he's done with One Piece, and you cannot take that away from him. I think there's tons of things to learn, and I've done a ton of videos on that very subject about things to learn. Well, let's not just compare manga to Western comics randomly. That starts making very little sense whatsoever. And like I said, you wind up making yourself look like a fool when you do. Do yourself one last favor. Go look up Rumiko Takahashi. She is just incredible and super rich, and that is the model. I think that of how this can all work. I think that people get, she's one of the people that I always point out of like saying, well, the comic industry hates women. Like, I don't know. There's one of the richest people, one of the richest creators on the planet. It's a woman, made manga, comic creators on the planet, not Kota. You understand what I mean. Hey, let me know your thoughts and questions below. Again, love manga, but we got to be fair about how we're comparing these things. Otherwise, we make very stupid comparisons. Thanks for listening.